Hello everyone, this is ponderonweather. In this update, we've got a tropical disturbance in the Gulf that'll bring heavy rains to parts of Texas, while the ridge will start to build over the central plains and out west with the heat coming back. Out east, the cooler conditions will remain for the rest of the week. Welcome back everyone, ponderonweather here. This is your weekend update. So let's take a look at the overall satellite picture this morning. You can see what's happening here with this ridge of high pressure starting to build back over the central plains. They've seen that pretty much all summer long. We did have a stalled, kind of an old frontal boundary that shifted out into the Gulf of Mexico. The National Hurricane Center did in fact put a X, which is a 10% chance of this developing. You can see it's kind of a broad area circulation. In fact, the Hurricane Center out there had a reconnaissance plane was scheduled to be out there this afternoon, but they have since canceled that because it continues to remain really broad and not really have some sort of closed low. It's mid-level circulation. It is an Invest 98L. They labeled it. It's got winds of about 25 miles an hour. But this will shift west and it'll eventually start to shift southwest and actually bring some much needed rains into parts of Texas. We do have these other stalled frontal boundaries out here off into the Atlantic, bringing really all the heavier precipitation out in the open waters. Then we have that monsoonal flow that's been alive and prevalent, while the ridge of high pressure will start to build back over the west, bringing plenty of heat continuing for them. But we do see some subtle signs of instability in portions of Illinois here. That's going to bring some marginal storms later on this afternoon. And there's actually even a slight tornado risk with that activity as well. So let's take a look at the overall hazard map this morning. We've seen the monsoonal flow. This monsoon has been alive and prevalent this year. In fact, places like in Vegas, they had another downpour the other night with the flash flooding setup. In fact, this is their strongest monsoon they've seen in the last 10 years. So it's been sending some beneficial rains, no question, but some of this is fast falling too fast for everything to kind of soak in with all the drier conditions they've been dealing with for months out there. But it's nice to see the rain starting to eat away a good chunk of this parts of the drought areas, and some of those flood watches will extend all the way into portions of Wyoming later on today. But man, the temperatures this morning is really nice, guys. I mean, especially out here in the Ohio Valley. We've been talking about this cold front for a while now on this channel, and yeah, widespread 50s this morning. So you're waking up to some much cooler conditions and those lower dew points out there. So the air is just really refreshing, especially after we've been dealing with all that heat as of late. I mean, we're in the middle of August, so it's nice to see these temperatures. And back where all these yellow shaded areas, especially in the orange, the ridge of high pressure is still pretty much dominant, but there are pockets of cooler conditions this morning, and I think a lot of those cooler conditions will remain for a good chunk of the week out here in portions of the east. So, but today we do have a marginal risk for some storms. I showed you some instability up here in the portions of Illinois, that back into Peoria this afternoon, into Chicago, into Milwaukee. Some of those could be on the stronger side. They do have a marginal risk for severe weather. There's also another pocket up here into portions of Montana, but some of these down here could bring some larger hail. Some of those isolated areas could be picking up some quarter size hail. Not out of the question. You could pick up some $half size hail. Down here further south, there's that tropical disturbance that we'll highlight down here into portions of South Texas, and you just kind of get this sea breeze action really along the coast here as you take advantage of this diurnal heating into the afternoon hours, and they'll have some popcorn variety scattered thunderstorms for them. But yeah, there is about a 2% chance of seeing a tornadic supercell this afternoon. So it's definitely not out of the question. I know some storm chasers are going to be heading up there and kind of see if they can see anything come out of the sky from this particular system. But yeah, it's mainly going to be a wind event. It's going to be a scattered large hail event. But yeah, not out of the question. You could see possibly an isolated spin up tornado up there. So just be on high alert this afternoon. But further to the south here, we'll kind of zoom into that disturbance. Here's the latest EPS guidance. I mean, this is a tropical depression. about 65% chance it forms into a tropical depression. Right now it's 25 miles an hour. Of course, tropical depressions 35 miles an hour. So I mean, regardless, it's going to be running out of waters. I mean, you got about 24, possibly 36 more hours before this low pressure center will actually start to head inland. But the good thing is it'll actually send some beneficial rains to parts of Texas. But man, here's the latest drought index. It's just been crazy brutal summer in Texas with a good chunk. In fact, 68% of the entire state is under an extreme drought. So any moisture, any precipitation they can get in those areas is welcome rain. Further to the south, where mainly most of the heavier rains will be, is still in a moderate drought. But yeah, you kind of wish some of these rains would push into more of a central Texas, but the way the alignment of the system, it's going to be essentially further to the south in the deep south Texas. Now let's take a look at some of these totals, what we're kind of looking at as far as what's going to come out of this system. So again, it's going to be moving, it's heading west now. I think it's actually going to be shifting west southwest. I mean, you got a pretty dominant ridge of high pressure that's going to be coming back over the Rockies and parking itself over Oklahoma and Texas. That's going to steer this system, keep it well south, and that'll bring some of that heavier rain. So you just kind of get scattered activity into portions of, say, the Houston Metroplex and further south, but mainly the heavier rains are going to be like points Corpus Christi, back into Laredo, back into deep south of the Rio Grande Valley. So those areas could be looking at 2, 4, yeah, some of these isolated pockets of 6 inches of rain. It's definitely not out of the question as this system will continue to traverse across. Probably going to make landfall, you know, somewhere around tomorrow afternoon time frame, but spread some heavier rains and some much needed rains for those drought parched areas. So let's move forward and take a look for Sunday. And yeah, that monsoonal flow will just continue to be alive and prevalent up here into portions of Arizona, back into Utah. That'll sneak into portions of Colorado, getting into Wyoming with those flooding rains, especially as we get into peak heating. So your 10 o'clock time frame is always a crucial part to be on high alert for flash flooding out there. As that system will move through, there's your setup in deep south Texas, and then of course you just get some sea breeze action into portions of Florida. And unfortunately, you got more heavy rain coming back for portions of Kentucky, especially into West Virginia. This area has just been inundated with all the flooding as of late, and you got more rain going to be on the table as you head into Sunday. The monsoonal flow continues for the deserts out here going into Monday. There's that system will continue to be traversed across into South Texas. It'll eventually head into Mexico and just kind of fizzle itself out, as we do have some pockets of instability with some heavier rains with these kind of stalled, you know, alignment of frontal boundaries. These could be picking up some heavier rains as well throughout the week, and some of these areas could be looking at flood watches and flash flood warnings in portions of Nebraska, Iowa, especially heading into Missouri, as these kind of training cells will be inundated, especially as we head into your Monday time frame. But going forward, as you go into next week and into your Tuesday, there's the ridge of high pressure pretty much going to be dominating over much of Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas, like a broken record. And then for out west, much of the West Coast will be heating up in a big way. So you experience a fairly decent summer, but the last 3 weeks have been really cranking up the heat and really drying out in those areas. And that will continue to come back for them. So it's adding up, and this heat is going to be alive and prevalent in all these areas up here. A lot of the areas, places just don't have air conditioning, so they're just not used to this heat. They get it, but this is an extended heat spell. They've been adding to these heat compounding over weeks. It kind of takes its toll on you, but unfortunately it's going to be, coming back with a vengeance and really start cranking up the heat again. So you got plenty more heat, unfortunately, coming back for those areas, and that a lot of it will spread into Montana and especially into Canada as well, as we do have a kind of a weak disturbance with that weak cold front. That's going to be setting up the flooding threat for midweek in this area of the country, as this little cool front will slowly move further south. But here's the overall temperatures for Tuesday, and there's the continued nice weather for a good chunk of the east, the northeast, the Ohio Valley, the mid-Atlantic states, widespread 70s and some lower 80s for much of those areas for high temperatures. Points further south, you got widespread 90s for a good chunk of the southeast here. But once you get under that ridge of high pressure in Kansas and to Oklahoma and to Texas, easily triple digits, if not 104 in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Dallas, Fort Worth. Widespread triple digits coming back for them, and there's those hundreds cranking out into portions of California, portions of Oregon, getting up into Idaho, into Montana, upper 90s. So, and then there's that rain cooled air with the monsoonal flow for the Four Corners regions, and that just kind of intensifies even further as we hit peak heating as we go into Wednesday. There's the cooler conditions to still funnel in effect, but you can actually see this cold front that's going to be right here into Arkansas, portions of Tennessee, portions getting into North Carolina. That sneaks into Oklahoma as we get into your Wednesday time frame. Further to the south, you get what they call compressional heating. So you typically see your hottest temperatures of that time frame ahead of a cold front. Kind of a squeeze play in effect. So you could be topping out to say 106 degrees in the Dallas-Fort Worth area on Wednesday as you'll hit to peak heating with that compressional heating. And there's the triple digits coming back with a vengeance for good chunk of the Pacific Northwest. So widespread triple digits coming back for them. But there's the cool boundary. As we go into Thursday, you'll start to see subtle hints of some heat relief as that cold front will start to ooze itself out. So you get what they call these backdoor fronts. You got this trough that's been going to be dominating for much of the week out here to the Ohio Valley. Will slowly build and shift further west over time, but so by Thursday time frame, it's going to be able to eat away to that ridge of high pressure and set up what they call northwest flow. So then you get much of a cooler flow instead of coming in from the south. That'll eat away the ridge of high pressure and drop you back to close to like just normal conditions for you guys in parts of Texas, even slightly below average, while much of the heat really starts to intensify out there in the Pacific Northwest, and that'll bring some rain showers back again. So you'll get some of those rain showers, but this won't be until Thursday coming up for next week for parts of Texas, and that'll sneak into parts of the southeast as well. But yeah, over time, you can definitely see what that trough on the 500 millibar that's going to be dominating over much of the Ohio Valley will slowly shift further west, eating away that ridge of high pressure over time. Will drop your temperatures slowly to average by then. I think it just even gets better as you go into the following week. So here's your overall setup for the next 7 days. So a good chunk of the east, your Ohio Valley, your northeast, your mid-Atlantic, all along the East Coast is going to be experiencing cooler conditions, pleasant conditions, really nice weather for them. There's your ridge of high pressure dominating over the Central Plains. The cooler conditions with all the cloudier skies and the rain around, experiencing below average temperatures for this region, with the ridge dominating over the Pacific Northwest. But there's your winds too. Not really windy this week. It's fairly a quiet week in the weather department. With just that tropical disturbance, and that's not even going to be a storm. So it's fairly quiet in the weather department right now, which is a good thing. So yeah, not much wind to contend with as well. Here's your overall rain prospects for the next week. So there's your system diving in from off the coast of into the Gulf of Mexico, heading into Texas with some much needed rain. There's your desert southwest rains over the Four Corners regions. There's your ridge of high pressure, a lot of sinking air, going to be all next to impossible to rain in that particular atmosphere. Then you get that pockets of ridge of high pressure over the Central Plains too, continues to remain dry. And where those stalled frontal boundaries will set up, that's we'll bring in the heavier rains, and some of those could be flooding rains as well from Nebraska to Missouri, heading into Arkansas. And then you get these little sea breeze action and these fronts stalled along the coast here. We're taking advantage of these warm waters, but most of the heavier precipitation with these stalled fronts is actually going to be out in the open waters of the Atlantic. So hey, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely leave your comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update where I protect you before and after the storm.